Good morning. It's Monday, October 27th, 2008. And I am Marcel Gagne, your host for Wooftle Bites. Wooftle Bites is your occasional daily FOSS and Linux news show, in case you didn't already know that. Today I've got a lot of interesting little tidbits, and before I do that, however, I need to put on my press hat. So let me put on my press hat here. Ta-da, ta-da, ta-da. Press hat, press hat. See, I always think that the press hat makes me look a bit more intelligent. And, well, never mind. We won't even go into that right now. I want to start off by telling you about an interesting little clip over on linuxjournal.com. Linux Journal actually has a Thursday night show called Linux Journal Live, where host Sean Powers talks about a variety of things, whatever. Anyway, this last week, he actually talked about netbooks with Jess Hall, and basically they talked about all those cute little netbooks out there, the ins and outs, why you'd want one over another, what's good, what's bad, all these other sorts of things like that. So you might want to check that out over on Linux Journal. Remember, the links for everything that I talk about are at the bottom, directly below these videos. The next thing that I want to mention has to do with the fact that we're only 3 days away from the release of Ubuntu 8.10, the Intrepid Ibex. But tomorrow is the day when the development freeze for Fedora 10 takes place. And over on Phoronix, there is, a little bit of talk about that, but there are also some screenshots of the upcoming release. So if you want to go check out what Fedora 10 is going to look like, in case you've already had plenty of screenshots of Intrepid Ibex, go and check that out. PC World today reports that OpenOffice.org actually broke records in its first week of downloading OpenOffice.org 3.0. You might recall when I chatted about this last week that the demand for OpenOffice.org 3.0 was so incredibly high that the servers went they crashed. So what they did was they put up text links so you could download your own copy of OpenOffice.org. Anyway, phenomenal downloads, 3 million in a week. Now, what's interesting about that is that 80% of the downloads were from Windows users. That's 80% from people running Microsoft Windows. Now, over John McCreesh, who is the lead marketing guy over at OpenOffice.org, mentions that, of course, with Linux users, they tend to get their updates via their distributions or sometimes from other websites and so forth. So those numbers don't accurately reflect exactly how many copies actually went out, but that's directly from the OpenOffice.org site. It's really kind of interesting to see how many of those people are Windows users. Now, they have an ambitious goal over at OpenOffice.org, which is to have 40% of the Office Productivity Suite marketplace by 2010. Now, they've got a long ways to go on that, but I thought I'd mention that so that you could go out there and give them a hand, download a bunch of copies, install them on PCs, convince your company, your office, your government, your school to use OpenOffice.org instead of that other thing. Speaking of the other thing, Microsoft this week joined, are you ready for this? An open messaging standards group. Now, they're developing a new open messaging protocol called the Advanced Messaging and Queuing Protocol, AMPQ, which is actually a binary protocol, which is in stark contrast to XMPP, which, by the way, is already an IETF standard. XMPP, by the way, is the extensible, I gotta do this right, extensible messaging and presence protocol. Now you say, what the heck is that? But you were probably already running it. If you're one of the people out there who's running Jabber or who's running Google Talk, then you're using XMPP all the time. It's actually out there, it's already an existing protocol, and it's open text. Although you can use it over a secure connection, it's actually open. I mean, you can actually see the text because it's based on XML versus the new one, which is supposed to be a binary format. Now, the fact that Microsoft has joined this group, we have to ask ourselves just how long this is going to be an open standard. But I digress. I'm going to close this off with a couple of stories that may not seem like they have a lot to do with open source and Linux and so forth, except that they have a lot to do with open. And it's this. Google and Apple. Google, of course, is a company that does do a lot with open source, and actually Apple does some stuff with open source as well. Safari browser, all these sorts of things. Anyway, and of course the fact that their operating system is based on BSD. But what's interesting about these two companies is they have joined the fight against Proposition 8. Proposition 8 is a dubious proposal from California which seeks to rewrite or amend the U.S. Constitution to define marriage as the union of a man and woman. And the whole point of that being able to overturn the law that made gay marriage legal in California. Well, Google has put forth $140,000 to help defeat this proposition, and Apple has put forward $100,000. So they're not only talking in words, but they're also talking in deeds. Both companies will tell you that this is not a question of, morality or whatever the issue might be, but it is a question of equality and fundamental rights. And many a comedian, of course, has already made the joke about the idea that people who are, gay people should have the opportunity to be as unhappy as, regular heterosexual married couples. I know, it's a bit of a joke and so forth. So, those companies are out there fighting Proposition 8. And by the way, if you're one of those people who thinks that this whole thing should be that gay marriage is a bad thing and should be overturned and we should redefine it in the Constitution and so forth, I just have one thing to say, which is, get with the 21st century, for goodness sakes. I mean, you're talking like a million freaking years ago. Move with the times. And just to let you know that there's nothing unusual in gay marriage. The same issues that govern it, namely people being upset about not being invited to weddings and so forth, happens here as well. And I'm going to close this off with an interesting YouTube video. Remember, the links are at the bottom, which is that George Takei apparently did not invite William Shatner to his wedding, and William Shatner is not happy about that, and William Shatner waxes poetically, or waxes anyway, on the whole topic in the YouTube video that's below. So anyway, I'm going to close it off with that. There we go, lots of cool stuff, openoffice.org, Apple, Google, Fedora, Ubuntu, Linux Journal, we got all sorts of cool stuff, and we're going to close it out here. Remember, WFTLBYTES.com is the website. Thanks for joining me, and I'll see you later. Not tomorrow. I'm going to skip tomorrow, but we'll see you later. Take care. Bye-bye. That's it. I'm finished. I'm done. Bye.